YouTube, how's it going? Welcome back to AJ's Garage. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you for your interest in the channel. Today's video starts off a little different than normal. I'm usually right in front of the truck or near the truck, but currently the truck is in the garage about 5 feet that way. But this floor is going to be on some rust repair on the floor. And just cleaning up the floor, getting it prepped for carpet and the steps ahead. So also, if you've seen any of my previous videos, you've seen that the floor was worked on previously but just left unfinished. So this one will go over the completion of the floor finally. Also, I've had a few of you reach out to me through email. I can't remember if I've mentioned it before, but you guys are more than welcome to email me. I'll put my email in the description on the screen here. If you guys have any questions, maybe over something that I didn't cover in the video, or just suggestions for videos that come up that you guys might need help with. Maybe it's something I plan on doing in the future. So feel free to reach out to me with any questions. Alrighty guys, so the first thing we're going to start out with is removing the bench seat. I already removed the seat belts. Once we get that out, we're just going to do some general cleanup work and scrub on the floor, get all the dirt and dust out of here, and keep going from there. Now, as you guys can see, the cab tank has already been removed. I actually took that out as soon as I got the auxiliary tank installed. So what we're gonna do is clean up this area. There's also some dust, dirt, just stuff that over the years that this truck's been on the road has gotten in between back in these corners. So let's see if I can get a picture of that and show you guys. We'll clean that out and then move on to the next one. So I got the passenger side cab corner down there all cleaned up. Just used the vacuum, used that extension, just got down in there. And then on the driver's side, it was actually a lot worse. Found this electronic entry card, and then I was just reaching down there trying to get a bunch of dirt out and just ended up scooping that out with my hand. So there's quite a bit still in there, but hopefully I can get most of it cleaned out. Alrighty guys, so I got the floor all cleaned up. Started taking the paint down with this aircraft paint remover. As you can see, some of the original Wimbledon white coming through. Right now I'm trying to focus on this driver's side floor pan. Just gonna clean it up all the way there to the transmission tunnel and up right here where that seam is, just so I can coat this rust here with some POR 15 and then move on to the passenger side. So I have the POR 15 all laid down. In some areas I applied it a little bit too thick. You can tell right back in here, so I just took my sander and took it down. I'm not really too worried about it. I want the floor to come out nice, but of course I'm probably going to be putting carpet in, so you won't be able to see it. That black stuff that was on the floor before, as you can see, some of it's still right here. I want to say it was almost maybe bed liner or something of that sort, some undercoating, because it's pretty thick. It's quite difficult to take off with the sander. So what's working best is a paint remover. Just about have everything ready for paint, just need to sand it down, clean everything up, and we'll apply some primer. Alrighty, so I finally got the rest of the floor all cleaned up. Using a combination of that paint remover, sandpaper, using a screwdriver to get some of the kind of thick stuff that was not really coming off real easy, but as you can tell, it looks pretty clean. Came across some surface rust areas, nothing really bad. That right there, some right here in the passenger side floor pan, and then of course back to that area that I need to eventually cut out and repair. But what I decided was, instead of just putting POR 15 on the driver's side floor pan, why not just coat the whole entire floor? So that's what I'm going to get going on now. Just going to use the degreaser and clean the surface, and then the etching compound that the POR 15 bonds to, and then we'll give it those 2 coats. So as you guys can see, I have the floor pan about 90% covered in POR 15, and seriously, it really has been just about 2 years, maybe even more time since I last left off on the floor project. A main reason being, I decided to not coat this rust area. You can see it's pretty bad. Pieces are just kind of breaking off, and this is the only real issue on the floor. But at this point now, I do have a welder. I finally decided to get one, and I ordered a replacement floor pan, so we're going to be working on that. And then also patching that hole in the transmission tunnel and that one there. And then of course covering those in POR 15. So let's get the floor pan mocked up. We're just gonna give it a general cut and then test fit it and see how much more we need to trim. And of course trimming this piece out. So here's the piece I cut from that replacement floor pan for general mock-up. Again, this isn't what's going to be going in the truck, it's just for a general fitment. I do need to cut out the actual piece from the floor pan. Now with cutting this, you do want to be very careful. There are two areas that you want to kind of watch out for. There's a cab mount. You can kind of see the 2 layers of sheet metal through this drain hole. So we'll cut that very carefully. And then along the door sill here, there's a piece that goes underneath the floor about, I would say about 1 inch, 3/4 of an inch. So when we cut here and up here, we don't just want to pass through. The rust doesn't quite go all the way out here. So I'm going to cut in just a little bit, and once we remove this, we'll get a better idea of how this is going to fit. But this is right about where I need it, just right there. So let's get to cutting the original floor pan out. Old rusty section is out, and now that it's out, I can really see how bad it was. Of course, it looks a lot different with the black contrast behind it, but it was definitely pretty rough. So this was the section that we cut out. Now, if you guys can see, this is that inner piece that I had mentioned that starts right here from the door sill. So this is all one piece, part of the floor pan that's not replicated on the reproduction pan. So kept that there. There also is this tab that's part of this lip here. I completely forgot about this. I was able to see it from underneath, but thankfully I didn't cut through. And then of course the cab mount. Now on that one, I did get pretty close to cutting through in that spot there, but there are 2 spot welds. One there, one there. I'm gonna try and reproduce those when I put my section of pan back in. So I wasn't really able to tell they were there with the rust, but if you guys are, go ahead and drill those out. Probably come out a lot easier. But now it's time to get this piece put in and kind of try to mock it up and cut it as close as I can, leaving a little bit of a gap for the welds to fill. So I'm going to get underneath, trace it with a silver Sharpie so it's easier to see, and just cut it a little bit bigger than I need. I just want to make sure everything fits on the top section there, and especially this angled piece up here. I feel like that's going to give me a little bit of difficulty getting that in. So let's start trimming. So I got the patch piece all cut down, and I'm really happy with the fitment. I just grinded down some of the edges, so clean metal. I mentioned I was going to do some spot welds here on the cab mount like the factory did, but just decided to go over it with some gloss black that I had in the garage just to protect the metal for now. I am going to go over any of this bare metal with some POR 15 once it's all welded in, but for now let's just start tacking. I did practice a little bit. These were some areas where when I had originally got the truck, since there was this rust in this part of the floor, someone had just put like a piece of tin and kind of just screwed it down. So when we took those out, of course, those left holes. If I can get you guys a decent view. There we go. So I'm pretty happy. Again, I'm new to welding, so let's see how this floor piece goes in. We'll start with tacks. I did also kind of make some Sharpie points just to line everything up so the gaps are even. There's this one up there, so we'll get those all lined up and start tacking. Taking a break from some of the welding and grinding, more welding, more grinding. Next I'm going to work on this section of the driver's side floor pan. Now originally, if your truck came with an automatic transmission, this was plugged up by a piece that looks like this. Held on with a few tack welds and seam sealer, but I took mine off because at the time I wasn't quite sure what it was. The seam sealer was just a mess. I thought about putting a piece of sheet metal in there just to weld it up, but with my limited experience I decided to go with something like original, and I figured I could just make it a little neater. So we're going to tack weld this in. I already sprayed some weld through primer, and then we'll do a bunch of seam sealer. Well, there it is. Doesn't have to be perfect. Like I mentioned, seam sealer is going to go all along the outside, and then of course this is going to get painted. So we'll clean that up when we get to it and paint it, but I feel like my tack welds are getting a little better. I ended up turning the speed on the wire feed up just a little bit, so starting to feel a little more comfortable with it, especially on the holes that I drilled. I was able to tack those in about 4 or 5 tacks and get a nice full weld and fill the hole. So getting better little by little. Along with the floor pan, I also ordered a way to repair this armrest. Now this is my driver's side armrest. It's been like this since I've had the truck, and it's something that's pretty common on these. The tab that holds it right behind this door card right here breaks off, and at first I wasn't quite sure how I was going to repair it. I figured I'd have to weld something to fix it, but I ordered a replacement from LMC to repair it. And I figured it was going to require some welding, but it's actually a little clip-in piece. So it'll clip in the same spot, and I'll show you guys in a second. I'll remove all this so you can see. Clips right in, and then the fastener screw that goes through expands it down here on this bottom piece, which secures it. So let's go ahead and put that in. Now that I have the door cover removed, we can get a better look at the retainers that hold up the armrest. These do look actually quite similar to the one that I had ordered from LMC. It's been a long time since I've had this off and taken a look at these, so I just assumed they were pieces that were welded in, but it looks like they just clip in. And taking a look at the one that's broken or missing, the hole that holds it looks like it's just expanded over time over use. So might have to just put that back in place and put a few tack welds to close that up. So as you guys can tell, the armrest is level and secured with the door. I did end up having to weld the kind of mounting location back in place, so I'll insert some pictures so you guys can get a look at that and see how I did it. Another thing I did replace as well, there used to be a hole right in this area it actually was this piece like this. What someone had mentioned in one of my update videos quite some time ago is they used to punch holes in either this side or this other side here for a kind of aftermarket AC, which would, the box would mount in this area here. So I cut this one out, just hammered it flat to get a general shape, and then once I put the new piece in, I started just tack welding here and getting the shape of it that way. I didn't record anything just because, again, my welding skills aren't the best and it's just kind of repetitive. So cleaned up the welds here, didn't bother up here much. I did add some seam sealer to this part of the cab. I had previously kind of just cleaned it off. And then last thing I did here is the transmission cover. Used to have these two little screw holes. You can see kind of in this area and somewhere up here. Welded those closed and painted this black. It doesn't need to be perfect. Of course, it's going to be under carpet, but now we'll move back over to the floor pan. Looking at the floor from this side of the truck, I'm pretty happy with how it's coming out so far. I did add some seam sealer along the back edge of the cab here. I think I previously just took the old seam sealer off. I do plan on painting this as well. This will be Wimbledon white down here along the edge. So it'll be a nice crisp line, and then of course the POR15. And I'm going to touch this up along with the replacement section of pan with POR15, so there's a few scratches in areas that I'm just going to add some to, just to keep it protected. And then moving down to the main part of the video was replacing the rotted section of floor. I'm just going to call it and leave it as it is. With my limited welding experience, this took quite a bit of time, just grinding, welding and grinding, more welding, more grinding. Some of it came out okay, these edges over here, and then up here, a little low here, a little high on this middle section, and then back here came out okay. I really struggled with this edge here. I originally cut this piece too small, so there was a huge gap here. So I ended up cutting it down about right here, cut another piece and welded that one in. This one took me a while, burned through a couple spots, but came out okay. Pretty flush there compared to some of my welding here. And then this gap here, it was just way too big. It just wasn't where it needed to be, so I think that's what caused this over here, is too much gap here, not enough over here, and I wasn't able to really keep an eye out for keeping it flat. But I did also replace a little piece here with moving things around and hammering pieces of the floor in place. It kind of just popped one of the rust holes. It penetrated through, I guess, just had it completely gone through, so I patched that one up. This one came out okay. But now we're just gonna prep the metal, clean it, and then use some POR15, so the metal prep and the cleaner will get all this rust cleaned up. And the POR15, of course, will protect it from rusting any further. So let me get that done and I'll show you guys how it looks. It's crazy to think that this really did take me 18 months to complete, but finally got it done and I'm pretty happy with the end result. I did apply some POR15 in spots all over the floor. I had cleaned the floor prior to applying it with a soapy solution, but in some areas where I reapplied it, it did kind of bubble up, or I guess you could say the fish eyes. No one's gonna see it, but I'm gonna know about it, I guess, but it's not that big of a deal. The part that is gonna be seen is this back section here. With the standard tank in the cab, you have an option to order a carpet that comes up to here, which is the carpet for the standard tank, or without the standard tank, the carpet will go up and mold over this and this won't be seen. So I will be ordering the one that is correct to the truck with the standard tank, so this will be visible. And going up to the firewall side, I just tried to leave a crisp line across there so you can still see some of the seam sealer, but I'm not too worried about that right now. I just wanted to get the floor covered up and protected. And then the part that I replaced, the POR15 did sink into some of the gaps and the differences in the metal from where I left certain areas high or low. And of course, because of the carpet, no one's ever gonna see it. But we're finally done. So that is the floor.